You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
And then, of course, there's the variable of when you go to a midnight showing, when you go to a premiere opening of a movie, if you don't go fairly early to get your seat or get in line to get a seat, and you show up right at the end, right before it's going to start, you're probably going to be stuck in a street pretty much down in the middle or in the front, because that's what happened with the Hunger Games when I went with my wife. We got there late for the midnight showing, so pretty much the only seats that were available were down in the front and to the right. And, you know, that's where you said the shots were coming from, and imagine if you had ended up there.
Well, right, and I've completely, that's another one of those variables that comes to mind. I think about the fact that because it was just my brother and I who went, like this movie theater has these big it has the aisles in the middle, and then off to the side there's these kind of like love seat sections. That's what they've always called them since the day the theater opened. I remember that was one of the big advertisements is we have love seats. And so it was like these two sections on the side, and they're little 2-seater sections where two people can sit. And, because my brother or my wife and my best friend had bailed on us, my best friend decided to go check herself into the hospital that night for other reasons. And she was actually on the news that night because as she's in the hospital, she's seeing people getting rushed in, and she's thinking, what the hell is going on here? And because she had decided to bail on the movie. But had the four of us gone together, we wouldn't have been able to sit on that side section. We would have had to sit in the aisles or off to the right where people were getting hit. So that's another one of those variables. You know, what if we decided to keep our babysitter for that night like we had? What if we had decided to, what if my best friend decided to come? What if my wife had decided to come? There's so many other variables that just would have changed everything. And I'm really glad that, based solely on, almost just pure luck, that I'm okay, my brother's okay, I'm able to tell this story. And I have these multiple keepsakes I just keep staring at. As a matter of fact, if I reach in my left pocket right now, actually, no, it would be my right pocket. I kept cash in my left pocket. But I have a receipt from the concession stand, which is for, and I spend entirely too much, but for popcorn, a medium drink, and some Reese's Pieces. Spent $15. Oh, my God. But yeah, it's one of those things that I just look at and just, I don't know. It just makes me look at such a bigger picture and how obsessed I was about a movie that, should have been pretty inconsequential to my life. Even had I seen the movie, should have been pretty inconsequential. And as a result, it turns out that it's now probably the most important movie I've ever attended.
Indeed. And I can't say this strongly enough. I'm so glad that both you and Curtis got out of there okay, and I think you said it best on your Facebook wall the next day when you said you're glad that you're coming home to your wife and kid, because to me there was nothing more important than that when I learned you were at the theater, that you were coming home to your family. And it's just unfortunate that 12 people don't get that opportunity to come home to their families too. But I have been asking and talking about everything so far with you, and then Peter hasn't had a chance to get in, and this is probably, again, it's unfortunate under these circumstances, the first time you get to talk to my co-host Peter, but Peter H. from Ottawa, Canada is on the line with me, and before you joined us, we were talking about the fact that he used to work at a movie theater, so I'm sure he'd like to ask a few questions, and I want to give Peter that opportunity as well. So Peter, go ahead.
Well, first of all, nice to meet you. Stevie didn't tell me we were going to have you on the show until like 30 seconds before, so I'm glad you can come on and tell your story. Let me ask you this real quick. Will this scare you from ever going to a midnight screening again?
I can say that it has scared my wife, and I guess because the two of us are usually doing all these things together, I can't think of any major midnight showings I could probably convince her to do. I can't even think of any. I know she's a big Hobbit fan and she wants to see The Hobbit, but I think even she would probably want to pass from here on out.
Now, you're talking about the love seat section. Is that like up in after you enter the theater, you climb up the stairs and to each side there's like little balconies, or I'm trying to picture this type of thing.
It's like right off to the very side section, and it's kind of really hard to describe. I'm actually surprised. I talked to a guy from USA Today just a couple of days ago, and he was trying to depict the theater, and somehow, based on my description, he actually managed to get a really accurate drawing of the theater. It's crazy how well he did it. But it's as you're walking up the stairs, it's like right off to your right, you just start to see these kind of there's these railings that just kind of hold these seats in, and they're little two-seaters, and there's probably about 15 rows of those.
Now, there was no security guards or anything like that at this theater?
I would like to think there is, because unfortunately, this is still Aurora, Colorado, and part of what makes this theater so popular in Aurora, it was popular for two reasons. One, no matter how anybody tried to escape it, it was the teeny bopper theater. There were always just kids running amok, and that's why a lot of adults actually grew to hate this theater, because it was where all the kids hung out, and so there was always security at this theater. I feel like there was always a cop or three walking up and down, just making sure that kids were staying out of trouble. And also, it's the cheapest theater, and like literally, when everybody always talks about, I paid $13 for a ticket to get into the theater. Century Theaters, $6.50 a ticket. And it's the cheapest theater in town. A friend of mine who was a manager there explained to me that the reason they lowered the prices was because they figured if they lower the prices on tickets and jack the prices up on food, it would get people in the door. And I guess they were very successful at that. But as a result, when you're cheaper, you kind of attract kind of a not so great crowd, and they tended to attract a lot of fights. And yeah, they had security, which is why I was very surprised at how long it took to get the proper I guess the proper law enforcement in there with the right equipment. But then again, also it's literally right around the corner from the police station. It's walking distance from the nearest police station.
Wow. Now, did anybody not notice, like, I'm trying to remember, was this shooter, he had his ticket, he walked through the emergency exit, left it, like, jimmied open, went to his car and got his guns, or did he just come in through the exits?
No, he bought his ticket, he went out through the emergency exit, which leads you right to the parking lot. And because honestly, people take that exit just to get out of the theater faster. They just go through that exit and go straight to their cars. And so, he went out of that exit, and yeah, he left something in the door to keep it open so he could come back in.
No, because I know the exit. I worked in a movie theater for 3 years, and I know the emergency exit doors. You can leave the theater to go to your car, but they close behind you. Like he would jimmy both doors, because the emergency doors we have, it's like you go through one door to leave the theater, another set of doors to get to the parking lot type of thing. It's like a little hallway. But like, I'm surprised no one noticed him leave and come back, or maybe people were thinking maybe he forgot something, or I don't know.
Well, yeah, and then there's another thing is, there's also the factor that when you go to the movies, that's the last thing you're thinking somebody's going to come and do. So even with him doing that, even with him going outside and propping the door open, I mean, who knew what he was going to do when he came back? I mean, that's one of those things that if you had told me somebody was just going to leave and come back a week ago and didn't tell me what he was coming back to do, I would have thought just the same as everybody else in that theater did, that whatever, he's doing something, but it's not my problem. And
for all you knew, he was going out there to sneak in some food instead of paying for concessions.
Right. Who knew? But honestly, I mean, at the time, I wouldn't have ever questioned that. I mean, now I will probably spend the rest of my life thinking when somebody gets up in a theater, what are they doing? So, it has definitely changed my perspective. But at the time, I can tell you, I wouldn't have thought twice about it.